Welcome in again, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the R&D Sports Report. My name's Dishmond, and I'm joined, as I always am, by Rylee. Rylee, how are we doing this evening?
Pretty good, bro.
All right, so we have a few things to talk about again, and it's been kind of a lot of news happening right between the 2 days, in between these podcast recordings. But I think, honestly, the biggest news story that's out there is probably the NCAA's final ruling, and they're ruling on the appeal for the University of Louisville and their men's basketball program with their stripper and sex scandal that they had, and that almost kind of even opened up Pandora's box for them. But the NCAA ruled on Tuesday, right?
Tuesday morning.
Well, was it? It was early Tuesday because it was like right after 12 o'clock, I think.
Yeah,
I think it's 12:05 they had the press conference or something like that.
Yeah.
So at 12:05, the University of Louisville had a press conference to announce the NCAA had come back with their decision on UofL's original appeal of the notice of allegations and the punishment from the NCAA, and they ruled right that Louisville had to vacate their 2013 national title.
That's just sad. It really is.
And it's not only the 2013 national title, but it's also the 2012 Final Four.
Mm-hmm.
So, they are having to vacate all wins. Now, in this situation, right, they only vacate the wins. The losses still count.
Yeah, I think it was 123 wins, I think it was.
I think it's close to that number. Because it is all wins from the academic year of 2011-12 through the 14-15 academic year. So from 2011-2015, where players were deemed to be ineligible student athletes, and they played in the games. So we still don't know all of the players, right? We don't have a list of the players that were deemed ineligible, but we know a few of them, and we know what. Let me rephrase that. We know what Katina Powell has said, and some of them, and we can kind of put puzzle pieces together.
Yes,
and that's what some people have done. But as the NCAA Infractions Committee previously ruled, right, they said that former Louisville head coach Rick Pitino failed to properly monitor Andre McGee, right, in his role in the arranging for the striptease and sex acts for potential recruits, as he was an assistant coach on Pitino's staff. Now, he was not just a regular assistant, right? He was a graduate assistant, so he's working on his master's degree. He's working on continuing his education.
Yeah.
Something that even Pitino did himself, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they come out with a statement, and both the acting president of the University of Louisville and the acting athletic director at the University of Louisville both said that they disagreed with the committee's decision. Here, I read a little bit of a statement here from Greg Postal, which is the acting president at the University of Louisville. He said, today the NCAA Infractions Appeals Committee upheld earlier penalties imposed on the University of Louisville, including vacation of victories from 2011-2015. This includes the 2013 National Championship and the 2012 Final Four appearance. I cannot say this strongly enough. We believe the NCAA is simply wrong. We disagree with the NCAA ruling for reasons we clearly stated in our appeal and we made a strong case based on NCAA precedent that supported our argument. And I'm not going to continue on there, but Jeff Greer of the Courier-Journal, right, he had that up on Twitter, and so you can go to his Twitter page and you can find the whole statement if you want to read the whole thing. But just, I want to stop right there, Rylee, at that first part where it says, right, based on NCAA precedent. And I think what U of L kind of did here is they tried to find something similar. Because a situation exactly like this doesn't exist. Right? So, you know, if you're talking in the court of law, precedent is a ruling that has come before, right, this certain case. So every case that starts off, right, will set the precedent.
Yeah.
So we haven't had, you know, a case like this prior. Maybe one that of kind of similar stature, but nothing where we've arranged for striptease and, you know, sex acts as claimed in the book of Breaking Cardinal Rules. But we got kind of the final ruling from the NCAA, and it was even shown that by Tuesday afternoon, right after the press conference, that U of L had actually already taken down the 2013 banner in the KFC Yum Center.
Yes.
Which is sad.
Very.
More sad to me for the young men who worked for that title.
Yeah.
Right? That did defeat Michigan for that title. That's who I kind of feel for more. But at the same time, I feel for the recruits that came in and the young men even that had to not necessarily endure this striptease and even sex acts, but like, right, you couldn't really say anything because you knew this might take your eligibility away.
Yeah.
And that's somewhat how kind of the NCAA was able to kind of get Louisville. Some kids that went to different universities that said, yeah, this did happen, right? Because the NCAA goes, look, you tell us the absolute truth or we can hold your eligibility. And that's kind of what ended up kind of putting the nail in the coffin for U of L and saying, hey, this actually did happen. But even as some other players have said, you know, they never saw it, and I would imagine if you're doing something like this, you know, as a person like Andre McGee, you know, being around the kids and the players, right, who would be the ones to go back and tell Coach Pitino that something like this were happening. And for me, I find it hard that nobody would have gone to tell him.
Yeah, me neither.
But at the same time, right, it may be this case that Andre McGee, right, he kept it sheltered enough that a person that he knew would go back and tell Pitino never would have found out about it.
Yeah.
So, you know, I know even some local businesses there in Louisville, right, they say, well, we're not taking it down. And, that, you know, that's fine. They don't have to.
No.
As the acting AD for U of L said, which is Vince Tyra, he's, you know, said in his statement, although they didn't agree with this, that they would completely comply in everything, and that's what they have to do. Everything that resembles the championship, right, has to be taken down. So the banner has to come down. Any symbolism of it around school, around the campus, right, it has to come down.
Yeah.
Stuff in the Yum Center, it has to come down. Now, you and I saw earlier that, you know, apparently a local bar there in Louisville has apparently already obtained the U of L banner.
Good for them.
Well, and the thing is, with it being on the internet, we don't know that it's 100% true right now.
Yeah.
But we did see it. You know, it could have been a Photoshop, but it did look like it was actually hanging there.
Yeah.
So, you know, as that establishment, they could hang it there. And Vince Tyra did make the claim that, you know, it would never be taken out of our minds, right?
Oh, yeah.
And he was speaking to the U of L fans specifically that it would never. We know who won that game, and that's the thing. In the record books, this is not going to say Michigan won the game.
No, not one bit.
It'll either say vacated, or it'll just be blank, right?
Pretty much.
Well, and that's how they do it in the record books. It just won't have anybody's name there for the 2013 national champion, because you can't obviously award it to Michigan. And you can't award it to Wichita State, which was who U of L played
in the Final Four.
Right, in the Final Four.
Yeah.
So, you can't go back and replay that game and see who won it. But at the same time, right, I feel more for the players who went and won it, and I know Russ Smith said, you can't take away this big ring I have.
Yeah,
pretty much. Right, he used a little bit different language, but
no, that was Kevin Ware.
Was it Kevin Ware? Oh,
yeah,
I'm sorry,
that was Kevin Ware.
I thought it was Russ Smith.
No, but I think he did have some comments as well.
Well, and most of them did, and Luke Hancock even made, which he was the most outstanding player of that Final Four, and he said, I don't care that much about the perception, and I don't think it changes that much. We won those games. It's not like that never happened.
No.
But as far as the NCAA record book's concerned, right, it never happened.
Yeah, sadly.
I'll be on. I'm not a huge fan of vacating wins. For the fact of you're going back and saying that these young men that earn these victories, and in this instance, it's not like they use performance-enhancing drugs, right?
Right.
They received improper benefits. Recruits coming in were receiving improper benefits, which is basically what this whole thing is about, is receiving improper benefits.
Yeah, pretty much something to where, kind of made them come to Louisville.
Right, to try and to sway their decision, which, is another issue that Louisville has, and we'll get into here in a minute. They have another issue with improper benefits still to come. But this ruling had been a long time coming. And for the NCAA, and this is where I know some U of L fans are upset, you have the issues at North Carolina.
Very.
Right, and they get off scot-free.
Yeah.
But the difference really between these two schools, right, is that North Carolina's issue was 20 years of academic fraud, pretty much.
Yeah.
And the NCAA doesn't cover that in their rulings, right? In their stuff, the NCAA is not. It kind of leaves it up to each individual school to basically police their academic standing, so to speak. If you meet this certain requirement for NCAA purposes, as into going to class and a GPA and all that, to be eligible to play. Right, that's as far as they're concerned. Now, North Carolina's issue was basically fake classes created to make an easy grade.
Yeah.
So, that's more of an issue of academic fraud and not athletics, which is what the NCAA doesn't, really get into. And I think the reason that the NCAA let North Carolina off is because they were kind of on sketchy ground. And they knew that if North Carolina, which North Carolina fought the whole time, and I've heard some people say that this might show why it's better to fight the NCAA in a case like North Carolina versus trying to cooperate in a case like U of L. U of L brought in people to help try to cooperate, and they said, hey, based on what I've learned and my experience in dealing with the NCAA, we should, go ahead and set out this tournament and impose our own probation.
Right.
Which I think, honestly, that did probably help them a little bit.
Yeah.
In the sense of probation and, like, the scholarship reductions, obviously it didn't really help when it came to getting your wins taken away. But that was something that may have been coming anyways, right?
Right.
Because as the NCAA rules would be, is that you use an ineligible player, you have to vacate those wins. And that's what we have here, is that those players were deemed ineligible. And unfortunately, for those young men, one of those wins is the 2013 national title.
Yeah.
But for, as we said, North Carolina, it's a matter of academics. UofL's was a matter of improper benefits, right? For lack of a better phrase, really.
Well, and I will say this. I think that if you talk to a UofL fan right now, what they're going to say their view is they've been through all this crap. They've been beaten down pretty much to the point of where there's no rock left, and if you look at their view, they want everybody else to go with them, only because since we've been beaten down so much, we kind of want others to kind of feel our pain.
Misery breeds company, right?
Pretty much.
And I understand that, that you wanted to see other people brought down. And let me also say, though, we still don't even know what's going to happen with this FBI probe, right? Which is like a whole nother issue in and of itself. But as far as the U of L 2013 national title, right, it's coming down. As I said, I'm not a huge fan of vacating wins because it's kind of like revisionist history.
Yeah. Right?
You're going back and you're changing history that already happened. The problem is, what else can you do, right? For the case of U of L, right, Rick Pitino's no longer there. And, you can't really punish him because he's no longer there.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, what do you do? And for the NCAA, that's kind of what they've ran to, is vacating wins. So, the vacation of wins, not a huge fan of it, just because, right, those young men earned those victories.
Not only that, speaking of young men, you got to think of their team now. They're pretty much taking the hit for
they're
everybody.
taking the media hit, right?
Right.
Yeah, because they're there now.
Well, and not only that, even I think there's a Louisville game tonight. And, I'm sure, who are they facing?
Tonight, as we record this, which is Wednesday the 21st, they're playing Duke.
Oh, okay.
So those students are probably going to have something to chant or say at U of L, and that is, I agree with you. That's where you got to feel a little bit for the U of L players now, right? They weren't here when this took place.
Even David,
Well, and that, David Padgett as interim head coach, right? And that may be somewhat of the issue Louisville has right now, unfortunately, is that when this scandal broke, the leaders that were at these different positions are no longer there.
Yeah.
Because they kind of took somewhat of a different approach. You had Pitino as the head men's basketball coach. You had Tom Jurich as the AD, and James Ramsey as
the
president of the university. I had to think of his name for a second. But, they were a little more cooperative, but at the same time defiant, right?
Yeah.
And we kind of even saw that today as Pitino held a press conference earlier today, right? And basically still just kind of fighting back. But at the same time, Pitino's press conference didn't really give us anything new today.
No, it really didn't.
We didn't really learn anything new from his press conference. And I think that's somewhat of the issue that Rick Pitino has, because, in his press conference, right, he's talking about all his assistants that are in his coaching tree, right?
Yeah.
And, how he didn't have any issue at Boston University, Providence, Kentucky. Talked about going to the 3 straight finals. And you just kind of wanted to look at him and go, Rick, we're not talking about your other teams that were compliant, right? We're talking about this incident where it wasn't.
Now, I get it. You know, Rick he was the head coach, and you know, as a head coach, you should know what's going on constantly with your players. And I kind of feel for Rick, sort of, just because if he didn't know about this, it kind of sucks for him. Not to mention his tattoo. That just sucks.
and you and I were talking about this before, but for anybody who didn't happen to see it or hear it anywhere, the tattoo artist, right, that gave Rick the tattoo, they asked him about, you know, tattoo removal because, you know, removing any memorabilia of it, right, and he obviously got that tattoo of the 2013 national championship, and the artist said, "We don't do tattoo removal here, but we do cover-ups." Right, which was just a kind of a great thing. Like, oh, you know, if he wants to take care of it, we'll cover it up for him. But from, you know, even Pitino's news conference today, right, not learning anything new. He was also apparently surrounded by his lawyers, right? I listened to it on the radio. I don't know if there was actual video of it or not. But you know, his lawyers are there because he's still suing the University of Louisville for his money after he was fired. Yeah. But, which is a whole other wormhole you can get into.
Exactly. Now, in his press conference today, now, like you said earlier, he pretty much said the same thing he did a couple months ago, saying that he had no knowledge of the reprehensible things that went on in that dormitory. Now, whether he's lying or not, I still feel for him. But you know, as a coach, you should know.
Well, and that's where he gets right the failure to monitor.
Yeah.
And I think even in his press conference, he even said something about, you know, they didn't hit us with lack of institutional control.
Yeah.
But he better be careful what he says because that could be coming down the pipe with this FBI investigation.
Yeah. He said. He said another quote that I see here. It says, "In 40 years of coaching, I've never been involved directly or indirectly in any effort to pay any money or extend any improper benefit to any recruit or recruit's family members or representatives."
But, see, he doesn't have to be involved in this situation, right?
No.
It wasn't it was a failure to monitor is what the NCAA said.
Yeah.
You failed to monitor a graduate assistant. And there's somebody else that still had to know about this Andre McGee stuff. And that's part of the reason I also think U of L doesn't want to try to file an injunction and even try to take the NCAA to court.
By the way, Rick did press on that and said...
Oh, yeah. Sure. Oh, well, he what's he got to lose now, right?
Yeah, true.
But, you know, I think that's all U of L, I think, is trying to accept this. And that's what I think the current administration is trying to do. The Board of Trustees and the acting president and athletic director are trying to just accept this as is, right? We tried our appeal.
Past it, yeah.
Well, and that's what they're, yeah. We don't want this. We disagree with it, but we got to move forward at some point, right? Because this, broke, the
sex scandal?
Yeah, the book. It broke in what?
It broke in
2015? 2016 maybe?
No, I think it broke probably a year after they won the championship. Was probably around like the end of 2014 if I had to guess.
Well, I know it broke in like in October or November. Let me see if I can find it. Oh, well, okay, so back to the banner. Apparently it's a replica of Louisville's 2013 national championship banner that's hanging outside of a bar.
Still good for them.
But, you know, and that's the thing. It's like, what's the NCAA going to do? Come try to shut the bar down? Like, they can't.
And then I think every Louisville fan would just blast the NCAA if that happened.
But, you know, all this breaks from the book coming out, and I'm trying to look here to see when exactly it came out. But you know, this isn't the only issue that U of L is going to have to face, right? This is just kind of round one with the NCAA.
Pretty much. I mean, I think you still got the Brian. I think it's Brian Bowen.
Okay,
you still got that crap.
So the book was originally published in 2015, according to a quick Google search here. Let's see. It looks like maybe around October the 6th, 5th, something like that. So these years, right, they go from 2011 to 2015. So right after that, she comes out with the book about breaking cardinal rules. And the thing that makes it somewhat sketchy is she talks about having parties even after Andre McGee had left Louisville, right? Had left as a grad assistant. I think moved on to even be an actual assistant or some type of assistant for, I believe it was University of Missouri, Kansas City. So, he wasn't there apparently, according to her last thing that they did there at the University of Louisville. But as we mentioned earlier, right, this isn't the only issue Louisville's going to have to deal with. They also have the FBI probe. And today we saw, right, a report that comes out, and it's a story here that I saw on Bleacher Report that talks about that the FBI apparently has documents that are connected to Andy Miller, right, showing payment methods, right, in this FBI probe. And apparently sources close to the investigation told Yahoo Sports' Pat Forty and Pete Thamel, right, that financial records and spreadsheets detailing who got paid and how much they were paid, as well as wiretaps, have given investigators a surprising level of specificity into Miller's business dealings as part of the FBI probe. Now, for those who don't know, right, Andy Miller is a former NBA agent and kind of at the center of this whole FBI probe. So it's him and his former associate, Christian Dawkins, right, are at the center of this into the bribery and corruption in college basketball, which is what U of L will have to, right, look out for, obviously. And that's the thing with, like, Rick coming out today and talking. Like, he better be careful what he says, and I think that's why he also had his lawyers with him.
Yeah.
Because he's got this, next thing on his hands, and that's part of the reason he's also out of a job.
Now, whether he is guilty of this or not, being in his position right now, again, whether if he's guilty or not, saying the wrong thing could blow so much crap up.
Well, and for him, right, saying the wrong thing could mean also easily being defeated in court and losing a bunch of money, which is what he's suing U of L for, is for his money that was left on his contract because he said they didn't fire him for cause. But this apparently, per the sources, right, the wiretap conversations involving Dawkins illuminate the blatant nature of deal-making to land top talent well before the players turn professional. All right, so we learned about this all in September, and recently we've been getting a bunch of different little pieces here and there.
Yeah.
And, kind of for even like U of L, sadly, this comes out a day after they get word from the NCAA.
It's like, can you get beaten down anymore?
Well, and that's the problem, and the reason that pretty much Rick got fired is that you had this scandal, right? And you get put on probation, and you know that you even put yourself on probation. And then you apparently have a coach on a wiretap or whatever it was saying, we got to be careful about this because we're on probation.
Yeah.
Right? And Rick even said that in his press conference today that, he told his assistants all the time, you better be careful because this new board of trustees and president, they don't like me, and you better not even jaywalk in this town.
Yeah.
But apparently one of his coaches was out trying to get money, right, to land recruit. So, we have this coming out today, right, and it was reported at the time, back in, I think it was September, right, when the federal prosecutors announced these charges. We also had a report later on by Pat Forty and Pete Thamel that in November, right, the authorities were raiding Miller's office as a part of the September probe. So, for this, it could open up a big wormhole in college basketball. And, we've already seen kickbacks from it. We've already seen the effects that have reverberated throughout college basketball. Right? You have USC's assistant coach Chuck Pearson is gone. Lamont Evans of Oklahoma State is gone. Emmanuel Richardson of Arizona gone. Tony Bland of USC. Right? They've all been fired after being charged in the case, right, or accused in the case.
Yeah.
And you even have a fallout for UofL's athletic director and Tom Jurich and Rick Pitino being fired. And on the UofL aspect of it, right, it all stems back to what they found out yesterday, where they've been accused of already making NCAA violations.
Yep.
And,
sad news.
And I know, UofL fans are somewhat upset because they've been kind of the center of this FBI probe, but they've been the center because they were already in trouble, right?
Yeah.
You would have probably a bigger topic on an Arizona or a USC because of their involvement, or even Auburn. But because UofL was already in trouble, that makes them the top story. And, I can imagine where UofL fans, right, they just want to be done with this. And, that's what I've heard from some fans, is that they were kind of glad the NCAA ruling, like, it was out, because it had been kind of held over and saying, well, when's it going to come out? Now, I do know David Padgett, right, the interim head coach for the University of Men's basketball program, right, he said he thought they could have released it later. And I tend to agree with him, but at the same time, right, you just kind of need to know this at some point.
Yeah.
So, whether it's now, where it can kind of be forgotten by the time we get to March Madness, or it's after March Madness, where who knows, the U of L men's team could have made a massive run through the tournament, been the talk of the tournament, and then all of a sudden, this would put a damper on that parade.
Yeah.
So, I understand the timing aspect, but you had to know at some point, right? It was going to come out at some point.
I can agree with the timing, but I feel like it would have been better at the end of the season, so it would have blown over by the time the next season was started up. I feel like that would have been probably the best timing, but timing now, it was it was better than revealing it right before March Madness and all that, So,
well, and that's kind of like, you still have a few weeks before we get into the tournament, before we, you have even a week or two before you get into the ACC tournament for them. So,
yeah,
we as a society move on, right, pretty quick from a lot of things, the forgive and forget, and all that. So I think here in this case, it may be a little bit of a story by the time we reach the tournament, but it won't be as big as it would have been had they released it during, or even after, after U of L had been, say, eliminated. What if they made a run that nobody saw coming to the Elite Eight or, Sweet 16, like, to have U of L fans on an upbeat, right, time, and then you would throw this after it would just be raining on your parade, right, on your good feelings. So, in this case, the emotions are still raw from it.
Yeah.
But I think it, as time goes on, it could be something that can change over time. So, but we still have a lot to go with this FBI probe, right? There have been reports recently that 3 dozen teams could be involved. You've had reports of even upwards of 50, right? Half of the top 16 that the selection committee released for the tournament, right, would be involved. And so, these reports are what they are. They're just reports and something that we won't know until it's actually fully released by whether it's the FBI or the NCAA now. And that's the problem is the FBI will probably release its findings before the FBI or before the NCAA ever tries to go and do anything about it, right? So this is still going to be a long time coming and something that will probably be brought back up a few times. But there are also other stories out there in the world of sports that we haven't really talked about, and some of them just kind of came up here recently, especially with the San Antonio Spurs, right? Greg Popovich comes out today, and said that Kawhi Leonard is most likely done, right, for the rest of the year.
That kind of sucks. I mean, I'm not like a huge Spurs fan, but I like Ginobili and what's his name, Tony Parker, and even Kawhi. So it kind of sucks to see someone so big like that kind of go down, and I feel like that can affect their run in the finals wise. But I mean, you never know. They could go clutch mode like LeBron always does, but you never know.
All right, so Kawhi missed the first 27 games of this season, right? Then he participated in 9 games and made the decision last month, right, the Spurs did, to sideline him. And he's recovering from a quad injury. And, for a guy to be able to jump around, right, you need the muscles in your quad to be able to work effectively.
Right.
For you to run, for you to jump, and, when you shoot, you jump a little bit. When you go to dunk, you jump. When you lay up, you jump. So you need that to be working efficiently. So, I know there was some talk recently of comments Greg Popovich had made, and I don't remember the exact comments, but Kawhi has told the organization, right, at different times in this rehabilitation, right, and trying to get back, that he wasn't comfortable with his ability to play through the injury, right, and that the Spurs should shut him down. And Popovich made some kind of comment along the lines of somewhat kind of like questioning his toughness in a way to say, why can't he push through, I guess, but... Like
a man-up kind of thing?
It kind of, yeah.
Wow.
It wasn't maybe...
Really?
Well, I don't think it was that strong, but it was kind of one of those things of, I don't know why he's not playing, right?
Kind of like a jab at him.
Well, and it's one of those things like, I think he's healthy. I don't know why he's playing. He's not playing, right?
Well, not only that, but, Greg is not... I don't know a whole lot about Popovich, but... for him to kind of take a jab at Kawhi, that's unexpected, kind of.
But I will say this, right, for the Spurs fact, they are setting third in the Western Conference.
Yeah.
Right, which in the Western Conference, third, I guess, might as well be last. I don't know, because it seems like it's the Warriors or the Rockets that are going to come out of the West. And I think Kawhi just added, obviously a different element to their game. But, the Spurs have, they are excited here with Rudy Gay being there and being able to return, right, from a heel injury. But, you still have really good players on the Spurs, right? You have LaMarcus Aldridge, which I think hasn't been the player that we thought he might have been.
Yeah.
When he went to the Spurs right after he leaves the Trailblazers.
I was expecting him to be like the
guy he was on the Trailblazers, right?
Yeah.
And he hasn't seemed to be quite the same guy. But also, there might have been talk that he wasn't quite happy with the situation there in San Antonio, but he's had to step up, and I think that probably suits him a little bit better because then he's more the superstar, the focus.
Yeah.
Where when Kawhi's there, he's the kind of more the focus than LaMarcus Aldridge.
Well, I mean, and you also got like two legends on that team. You got Ginobili and Tony Parker. Like, really?
Right, and that's like you have two guys in Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili, but at the same time they've lost a step, right? But the Spurs are getting play from different players from younger players even on their team, and that's kind of what they have needed to get that overall play, and that's what they kind of look for instead of having like a superstar, so to speak, like Kawhi Leonard.
So with him being out, such a big player like him, do you think that maybe they still have a chance at winning the West?
I don't think they ever had a chance at winning the West.
Oh, well,
I mean that's my like I don't.
I mean, I like the Spurs, but
well,
I didn't think they could beat the Rockets or the Warriors.
Well, and I don't either. And that's the problem. And I know me saying that, right, kind of took you a little bit of not saying I don't think they ever had a chance, but I guess I'm just so bitter because of the Warriors and the team that they have.
Probably.
And I think the Rockets are so much better than they were last year.
Oh yeah.
But I think it's Warriors, then the Rockets, and I think there's probably a good drop off in that 3 through 8 teams.
Well, and you got to think there's so many teams that are on the West that are really good.
Well, and that's the thing is the West has even changed though since the season began because a team like the Pelicans, right, lost a star player in DeMarcus Cousins.
Sad.
But I'm sure you saw Anthony Davis's comments, right, about he thought they actually had a chance to actually make it to the NBA Finals, and I can't say I 100% disagree with him.
No, I don't either.
Because I think when it came playoff time, I think in a 7-game series, they played almost such a different brand of basketball from everybody else was playing, right, with the 2 dominant big men.
And I felt like that was kind of their special.
Well, and that's the thing, is that they would have caused problems for people. On a night-to-night basis, it's different. But in a 7-game series, if you can't contain an Anthony Davis and DeMarcus Cousins, you're going to have to change. And they still have a guy like a Drew Holiday that's there, or a Rajon Rondo, right, that's there, that can also kind of take over if need be themselves. But I think this is a huge blow of Kawhi being out, possibly for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
Now, I will say that if you read Pop's comments and his quotes, right, it doesn't 100% rule him out because he said, I don't know when you would bring him back. It's getting kind of late in the season to be coming back, and when it's too late to come back, and that he probably won't make it back for the rest of the season. For me, it's like, well, you got till, April, May, or the playoffs for the NBA. Like, you still have time, I would think. But
well, I got a question. Can he come back? Like, even if they're in the playoffs, can he like come back and can he do that?
I think as long as they don't maybe put him on a certain list or something, I think he can.
Well, I wasn't for sure. That's why I asked.
Well, I'm not 100% sure because I don't know what their injury rules are, but like in the NFL, if you start on the injured reserve for that first week, you can't return until like week 8 or something like that. I think the injured reserve is like an 8-week process, at least for the NFL. It may be longer. But as far as the NBA goes, I think as long as you haven't designated them to maybe be out for their season, they can come back. But if the Spurs have said, yes, we're going to shut him down, basically we're going to say that this season's a loss for him because we want to be able to get him healthy for next year. Now, if you're still trying to get him back, when is too late, right? It is getting later. We've had the All-Star break. We're still sitting here without NBA basketball waiting for it to come back.
Yeah.
And we've played more games. I say we, like you and I actually played games in the NBA, right? But the NBA has played more games up to the All-Star break than they ever have before. So that means there's less games left, obviously, after the All-Star break than normal.
Yeah.
But the Spurs and Kawhi aren't quite the only stories in the NBA. A lot of news has been coming out of the NBA recently, and a lot of that is due to the fact that the All-Star break is happening, and these players are off, and you get more quotes from here and there. But Mark Cuban the other day on a podcast, and for the life of me, I can't remember the podcast name. It was something with Dr. Dre, I think.
Hey,
or
Dr.
no,
Dre.
not Dr. Dre.
I
think it said Dr. J.
was gonna say Dr. Dre.
I can't
He's
even
cool.
think of that for the life of me, right? But he was on the podcast saying that, at this point, he apparently held a team type meeting or whatever, and had them over at his house, and said that they'd be better off losing now.
Yeah, I saw that. It says Mavs owner Mark Cuban fined $600K for saying team's best option is tanking.
Right. Well,
Like, really? You really just... Well, one, you're doing on purpose. That's
and you're
jacked up.
admitting to it, I think, is
Right.
the problem. Like, hey, you probably could have seen this fine coming because you're admitting to it. And you said
it's
it
not
on...
like he doesn't have money either.
Well, and that's like... And you said it on a podcast, so you know that's going to get around. And I think the reasoning for his fine was, like, comments detrimental to the league, I think is what they said is, why he was obviously fined. But he was obviously fined because he said that the Mavs would basically be tanking, right? Trying to lose to increase their spot in the NBA draft and get a better odds shot at maybe getting a number 1 pick or even a top 5 pick.
I think that's jacked up. I think that's kind of screwing your players over. I also think, you kind of have a Hall of Fame. I know he's not in the Hall of Fame yet, but he's
No, but I
probably
think he
going
will
to
be one day.
Well, you got Dirk Nowitzki, and you're pretty much screwing him over. His loyalty is ridiculous. He's been on the same team for how many years? Like 30, I think. How many
It's
years?
not quite 30.
Oh my gosh, I probably sound stupid there.
Well, and it's a few extra years than he's been on there. He is maybe in his 18th, 19th, 20th season, somewhere around there, right?
Wow, and I said 30. Wow.
Yeah, a little overshot by you.
A little
but,
bit. I was just kind of going on fly. I wasn't really thinking. My bad. But yeah, I feel like that's kind of screwing your players over, and being the...
Well, I think it's also wasting a year of, basically Dirk. But at the same time, I can see where he's coming from in the sense that we don't have a shot to win the West. We don't have a shot, to win a title. So what we ought to do is just tank and try to, get the best option out of this year in the fact of getting a high draft pick. But, that's, the Mavericks also have other problems besides that. Because you have stories, but of the Mavericks having an investigation, right, from a Sports Illustrated article, an investigation of the culture, apparently of some in the Dallas Mavericks organization that was not very friendly to women. And not something that maybe we're not really get into a whole lot. But if you want to be able to read it, the story is up on Sports Illustrated and the investigation that they kind of did and talking to former women and that worked for the Mavericks. But, it's some predatory behavior and, some very highly offensive behavior toward women by somewhat of their former, some of it coming from their former, I believe, president and operator of the Mavericks there. But, so not only tanking in the $600,000, but there could be more stuff coming down the pipe here for the Dallas Mavericks. But as we've been talking a little bit on and off, right? We still have the Olympics going.
Oh, yeah.
And once again, I was watching last night. I was watching, two women bobsled, and I still can't get over.
No, it's ridiculous.
Well, and to fold and pretty much in half as that back person, right?
I'm just saying that would kill my back.
Well, and not only that, it would make me sick. And I've said that before, but I think I'd maybe get past a couple turns and I'd hurl because it's not like they're going slow. Like they get up toward like 85 mile an hour.
Well, one, you're on ice, so you're slipping constantly, and it's pretty much closing your eyes and going downhill on ice. Like, who wants to do that?
Well,
who wants to do that?
Well, and that's kind of even like skeleton and luge. Like, who wants to go down a track like that head first? With skeleton or try to lay flat and not really be able to see where you're going in luge. But that's what make Olympic athletes, the Olympic athletes, I guess.
I was going to say, props to those guys. They got so much skill. I kind of feel like a bum, though.
Even somebody like Lindsey Vonn, they talked about last night all the surgeries that she had gone through. Tearing her ACL and, breaking a thumb and a wrist and this and that, like all the injuries that she had suffered, and still doing her downhill skiing. Wow. And, they get going fast too, and in an instant like that, I watched one last night come off the jump, and her, like, just the side of her ski gun and got stuck in like a plow path, I think is what they said. It was kind of like a little rut, and it just got hung, and it almost threw her down.
That would have sucked.
Well, and it was right at the end of her run too, as she came over the final hill pretty much. But the Olympic athletes are almost, they're just a different breed.
It's like they're superhuman.
But there's also figure skating. I feel like every time I try to watch the Olympics, there's always figure skating that is on, right? I feel like I'm always watching that, and like I can watch a little bit of figure skating. Now I know there's also ice dancing, and there's a difference between the two. What the difference is, I'm honestly not really that sure of, but.
Now, I will say this. When you're watching figure skating, or even ice skate dancing, I've seen a lot of falls lately, like, I wouldn't say highlights, but like highlights of people falling constantly in this Olympics. And it kind of sucks because I see them fall on their face. Now, I'm not going to say that I'm better than them because I can't even get on ice skates. I've tried before, and my butt hurt after the next day. It was awful. It was just awful, dude. It was a bad day for me. So, just seeing those guys fall, I kind of felt bad for them because I know that, one, you're in the Olympics, you're representing your country.
And you've worked so hard for it, right?
Exactly. And it just kind of sucks to see them go down, one, so quickly, and two, kind of hurt themselves.
And when they go down, it pretty much just ruins the routine, right?
Oh, yeah.
There's really not a whole lot of bouncing, back from that. Like, some of these race-type things and freestyle snowboarding, half-pipe snow, like, you get the best run that you have, right?
Oh, yeah.
For the ice skaters, the figure skaters and the ice dancers, typically they get a run in like I noticed last night they get a run in like short program, then they get a freestyle. Well, if you don't do short program well, right, then it's pretty much just ruined you for the freestyle because you would have to just kill it then.
Pretty much.
But I also was watching curling yesterday. Love me some curling.
Oh, yeah.
Watching the U.S. team go for victory. And watched a little bit of hockey. And let's see, the day before I think I watched some women's hockey, which they go for the gold against Team Canada. Go USA. Yeah. Beat the Canadians, our lovely neighbors to the north. And having been to Canada once before, lovely country. But we're talking the Olympics, so Team USA all the way.
Always wanted to go to Canada. Is it nice?
It is. Depending on where you go, the climate obviously is very different. The further north you go. I had the privilege of being able to go to Toronto, and it is a nice city. lots of things to see there and very interesting. But
nice.
Kind of like it's different, but somewhat the same. Yeah,
right.
But yeah,
just different country.
Well, it's a nice experience to be able to go to a different country, even if it is just up. It's not like I went over to Asia or anything like that. I went to Canada, but having the ability to do that at a younger age was nice to be able to experience it, and something that hopefully I'll remember forever. But do you have anything else with the Olympics? Any other thoughts? I am glad to see that the U.S. was able to increase their medal count by a couple last night, because they were almost at the point that they were going to have their lowest medal count since, I believe it was 98 in the Winter Olympics.
Wow, that's surprising.
They were setting at 12 when I was watching last night, and that would have been their lowest since 1998, when I think they also had 12 as well. But we've increased a few. We're up to 17 total medals. We have 6 golds, 5 silvers, and 6 bronze.
That's good.
So, a nice spread. Obviously, a country like Norway having 33 puts it in a little bit of perspective. You can usually tell these kind of almost colder climate countries, right, that have the, Canada has 21 medals. Germany has 24. So
wow.
We are currently sitting 4th, which is, it's better than sitting like 5th, 6th, obviously. But we are just ahead of the Netherlands with 16 medals. So last night I also was watching some speed skating.
Oh, that's
I watched. It was a short track, and I watched a relay race.
Yeah,
that thing was intense.
Oh, I'm sure you're going fast.
Well, not like you're trying to go fast, but the way that these women are tagging each other basically, and they switch kind of like every half lap. Yeah. You have women skating on the inside of the track, and then they'll pop out in front of their partner, and they kind of just like hunch down and kind of bend over, and then their partner just kind of pushes on them, like they put their hands like on their hips there and kind of push on them, and that's the tag. And then they'll go for a lap and a half, and like you have to try to make these as smooth as possible.
Oh, I'm sure.
And I think it was the Korean team that ended up winning the race. The women did, but that thing was crazy, because it was like 16 laps or something like that.
Wow.
In the short, like, so you're doing this every half lap, and you can't switch within the last 2 laps, but
that's insane.
It was insane to watch. And I've always liked speed skating. It's a very intense sport and a very fun sport, I think, to watch.
Oh, yeah.
But we're going to get into our kind of random story, our weird, funny / story that we've kind of started doing.
Here we go.
At the ends here. And I think you might have seen this one already. But we'll see it. The title, right? Last time, if you remember, our title was a flatulent man forces flight to be emergency landed. But our title today is that 14 worms were removed from an Oregon woman's eye.
Ew, what in the world? I mean, I read something about that, but that's awful, dude.
And so...
gross.
Apparently, it was in total of 14 worms that were in her eye. Amy Beckley was working on an Alaskan fishing boat back in 2016 when she discovered something fishy in her eye.
How does she get her? Did she stick her face in the
okay, so it says in this article here I'm reading on the Huffington Post website that she felt a prick under her eyelid and figured it was just a stray eyelash. But after a week, she decided to see what was causing the irritation. And she is quoted here as she told BuzzFeed, "I put my fingers in there. I kind of felt I put my fingers in there in kind of a picking motion, and I pulled out a worm."
Oh God, that
Like,
makes me want to throw
the
up.
thought of that is, yeah, exactly. Just and
makes you cringe.
And so it gets worse. Is that she pulled out 6 more tiny worms the next few days, and so she feared serious problems. So she went and got in contact with an infectious disease doctor at Oregon Health and Science University, Dr. Aaron Bonera. And so
that's just awful, dude.
She gets in contact and goes to the consultation for it, which is apparently, and they find out that these worms are Tizella glowus. I don't know how exactly to pronounce it, but we'll go with it. It's a parasite that apparently is typically found on a cow eyeball.
That's just like the thought of pulling something out of my eye.
14 worms in a 20-day period came out of her eye.
Okay, here's the problem, okay? Here's the problem. You know how, like, when you're fishing, you know, you got the bowl of worms and all that?
Did the fish go for her eye? Is that what you're saying?
That's great. Did she, like, when she was, like, bored or figured that it was the end of her life or something, she was like, you know what? I'm just going to dump these bowl of worms on my face, see what happens. Like, well, how do you get 14 worms stuck in your eye?
I don't know. They
depending
say
on how big they are.
This apparently is only the 11th case of a human being infected with this in North America.
Ew.
And so they believe she was infected when a fly landed on her eye while she was traveling through cattle fields in southern Oregon.
That
whole thought, if a fly landed on my eye, I just spaz at that point.
Bro, I'd probably run screaming like a girl. I'm just throwing it out there.
No kid. But apparently this occurs, and more of these similar eyeworm infection cases are found predominantly in Europe and Asia in the rural communities.
Bless their soul,
right?
Dude.
That when they're in close proximity with animals, and they also have poor living standards. So this was just a random post I found, and so I was just like, I got to talk about this for a second. It's just the thought of having worms in my eye. I don't care how small they are. Like,
no, that's just.
Oh gosh,
Oh, that's so awful. If you guys are listening to this, you're probably cringing so hard right now, and if you are, I'm laughing because this is just awful. So awful.
Well, and that's the thing is, if they could see us cringing at talking about this, right?
Exactly.
Because I'm looking at this picture of her eye here,
Ew.
and it's just like you can see, like, if you lifted up your eyelid and like folded it back, you can see like this little bulge.
Dude.
Like it's just
like,
gosh,
stop, stop, ew.
But.
Now, question is how big were the worms? Did you see?
I don't think it ever showed how big.
The fact that I'm asking questions,
I know it's a little bit disturbing in and of itself, but
that's great.
I don't think it actually ever said
or
showed the worms exactly. But like this picture just kind of shows where they kind of like butted out from a hole here. But hey, the thought of a fly landing on my eye disturbs me enough.
Exactly.
Besides having worms in there as well. And watching this little video here that's on Huffington Post of this news station doing it is absolutely hilarious because they are cringing as they try to read the story.
They are trying so hard not to throw up.
But I think with our 14 worm story out of a woman's eye, I think that's a good point and a good cue to be wrapping this episode up.
Oh, yeah.
If you haven't already heard, if you haven't seen on our Twitter page and even our Facebook page, we are now on iHeartRadio.
Let's go.
So we have now another place that you can listen to us on iHeartRadio. You can follow us on there and listen to all our podcasts that they are all listed there for you, and we'll update as we upload new episodes. Right, there are other ways to be able to listen. iTunes, obviously. Spreaker, Stitcher, and now even iHeartRadio.
Yep.
We are continuing to keep trying to expand this, and we appreciate all that are listening.
We really do.
The one thing that we would ask you to do, just to kind of help us out a little bit, spread the word about us. Get your friends listening, and have them spread the word even more. You can also help us spread the word a little bit by going to our Twitter and Facebook pages and sharing those posts so that your friends can see and they know that you are listening to a podcast that will not only talk about a man that is farting a bunch on a plane and getting an emergency landed, but also worms being removed from a woman's eye.
Hey, it's interesting here. I'm just throwing that out there.
Well, and we're very diverse, and and we'll continue to kind of look over the weekend and see if I can find another weird story to get you with. But if you could just help us out in that way, we would greatly appreciate it. Just be able to spread the word. If you don't want to do that, you can go to iTunes and give us a review, right? Give us a 5-star rating because I think that's fair. And also be able to follow us or subscribe, whatever it might be on wherever you're listening, so that as these episodes are uploaded and dropped for you, they will automatically update for you and let you know that they're there. And with that will do it once again for another episode of the R&D Sports Report.